PBT Extra this week. We have a lot to talk about, but before we get there, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. It was good. Got together with family and did what one traditionally does on American Thanksgivings. We watched a lot of soccer.
Watch a lot of football.
No, we did watch some football that day and some parade. And okay, are you okay with how the dog show went? Like
No,
you didn't get
no.
Claire.
I know, yeah. So Claire wasn't competing. She retired after going back to back, which, go out on top. I get it. But that was devastating to me first and foremost. The Scottish Deerhound didn't even make, I mean, like it wasn't best in their category. So which for me was very not hurtful, but it definitely was disappointing. And then the fact that, the Frenchie won, I disagreed, personally, but I'm not the one judging. I still had a lovely time watching it. I actually learned about a new dog I had never heard of before called the Chinese crested dog, and it looks like, a rock star. It looks like a British rock star, like a very tiny, thin dog that's like
Okay, I'm
like a very thin dog. It's like, okay, well, are you eating enough? Like, are you getting 3 meals a day? It looks like it subsists off of cigarettes and maybe some illicit drugs, and it has very long hair that's like blonde, and you could just imagine it speaking with like kind of like yeah, like just like a really old British rocker voice. So
does this dog have to get the Keith Richard blood transfusion every once in a while just to keep going? Or what?
Yeah, I think this dog, like I said, I don't know, I don't know like its life expectancy. I don't know its health, all that stuff. But I would imagine it's a hard living dog, like a very on the road a lot, writes some great songs, But yeah, I liked the dog. I pitched it to one of my friends. I was like, should I get this little British rocker dog? Immediately, my friend was like, absolutely not. Get a Schnauzer. So, but I had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Watching the dog show and the parade was, phenomenal, Kurt.
Yeah, as always.
So let's talk basketball, shall we? Karl-Anthony Towns out 4 to 6 weeks with a calf strain. This is interesting. Right now, the Timberwolves are sitting at 10-11, just under 500. As the time of this recording. How does this affect their season at the current moment for the next 4 to 6 weeks?
I don't think it's good. Like they haven't been able to find themselves with him, right? Like it's not been smooth, and I'm just not sure this makes it better, Corey. I mean, I think my concern. Like, I guess you're going to get more D'Angelo Russell stepping up. They might you might have something more traditional than the two big format that's kind of been odd for them, right? Now you can have just one guy setting a pick, rolling to the rim, and you've got Anthony Edwards, you've got D'Angelo Russell. But I'll say this. I looked it up. The minutes this season so far with Gobert and Edwards on the floor and not Towns, they have like a negative 11.8 net rating. It's not been good.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Well, first of all, it's never a good thing that your franchise player's out. Like,
no.
I don't think that's like ever like that's just kind of like 101, right? Basketball, that's a problem. Number two, I think if we zoom out, not I know you're a stats guy. I'm kind of like the feel guy, and I do think the feel of this is concerning to me. New ownership, like a new era Minnesota, coming off of that playoff appearance. Like there's a lot of energy, coming around that team. This is a dampener. This is a huge dampener. Like you said, to think that they're below 500 right now, haven't hit on all cylinders, and this setback, part of this new era, I think that if I'm a fan, that should be concerning and alarming to me, generally speaking.
Yeah, and you could dig yourself a little bit of a hole, right? Like you're not too far out yet because nobody's run away with the West the way like the Celtics have in the East, but you're below 500. You're going to be without Towns, who's still, I mean, again, he's been down a little bit and he's under 33%. I think it's 32.8% from three. He's still putting up 21-4 a game. He is still a guy you still have to watch for him offensively. And now I don't have to watch for him offensively. I can focus more on getting in Edwards' way when he drives the lane or whatever my defensive priorities become. Is the concern, Corey, that they start to dig themselves a little bit too deep a hole to get out of?
I completely think that's the concern. And also, they're in a different position, right? So let's just, as far as, being like they're not like a young core in the sense that we look at, let's say, something like OKC, right? Or like Shai Gilgeous is,
yeah.
so it's not, or like Memphis is a super young core, Pelicans super young core. Clearly, Karl-Anthony Towns been in the league. He's, kind of like established himself. He feels confident there, as far as like leading. I would say he's in like the Donovan Mitchell kind of era, as far as like leading a team. So they're not like a super young core, but they are a young core. The fact that, they haven't gelled per se, and so they're not in a scenario that other teams are where, okay, if Giannis doesn't play, that's great for our young guys to get experience, right? Or in Philadelphia,
right, yeah.
Maxey can come in and take that next step, like we saw Jordan Poole. Like those kind of scenarios are different. The Timberwolves are not in the Warriors or not in the 76ers scenario. This is a problem. So that's the first thing for me. The second thing, as far as the conference standings, well, actually, I would love to hear you weigh in on that before we go into the conference standings. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you feel about that assessment?
Actually, I think you're spot on. And I think my bigger picture concern when you just zoom out is that this was always a bit of an unconventional rotation and roster. And we were all, before the season, we were talking like Chris Finch could win Coach of the Year if he can figure out how to work this thing. Well, Will Hardy looks like could win Coach of the Year because he's taken a really unconventional Jazz roster and kind of just played to their strengths and figured out how to do it. And that hasn't happened in Minnesota. So I think, like, just playing off what you said, it's the concerns are big picture. Like, does this really work? And I'm not, again, missing, like you said, missing Towns just doesn't help that.
And it's still early. We want to highlight that.
Yeah.
It's still early. But, because you can see some of these 500 teams, it's kind of like the NFL, right? Where, you may start off like 500 or just below 500, but then the second half of the season, you go on an 8-game win streak or a 6-game win streak, and you're a playoff team, right? So, like, I want to make sure the same thing can happen in basketball. It's still a little early. But right now, they're sitting at 11th in the Western Conference, right? Who's ahead of them? The Warriors, the Mavs, the Jazz, right? The Trailblazers, even the Kings. Who's behind them? Thunder, Lakers, Spurs, Rockets. So they're kind of in that scenario where it could go either way. Like you could either join kind of the doldrums of the Western Conference, because I don't know if they're in a position to compete even with the Jazz. But you're looking at the Mavs and the Warriors. They're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it looks like their peers right now are the Trailblazers and the Kings, which could go either way too. But that is squarely in the 8 to 10, 7 to 10 in the Western Conference, at the end of the day, Kurt. That's not the cream of the crop. And that's not even like, I would say a step forward from last year by any stretch of the imagination.
No, and I think with this move, you and I, even going into the season, questioned like, I don't know if this is going to work in the playoffs. But they're going to win a lot of regular season games. They'll be fine. They'll get there. And then I've got questions. Are they going to get there? Like it is a legitimate question. Like you said, the Warriors are starting to put it together. The Mavericks, we can talk about more later, but they still got Luka. Like they're still going to win a lot of games. That's not going to be easy to catch these teams. And, maybe the Lakers get on a run and catch up a little bit. But, like, the teams ahead of them.
It's a little scary.
Portland gets Lillard back this week, or next week. Yeah. So, like, it's.
And we think about this. And you think about 4 to 6 weeks, like what does that actually mean, right? So it's time of this recording, November 30th. Don't want to get too technical, but just to kind of put this into like real world, right? Looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 weeks would be December 28th. 6 weeks would be January 11th, right? So you're talking about January. Just behind, like a month out of the All-Star break. Through the Christmas Day games, yes, but like let's next phase of the season. I kind of like, we talk about this all the time. How does the NBA calendar break down? First 20 games, you make your assessments, trying to understand your roster. Like where are we? What are our pieces moving forward? And should we look at that trade deadline, right? And then you look at the All-Star break, a nice little kind of reassessment. Okay, that is like the point of the season that we talked about with the NFL. That kind of halfway through, can we go on a 6-game win streak, kind of like the Boston Celtics did, and become a playoff team, a real playoff contender, or go the other way like the Bulls did last year. Oh, we're really good after the All-Star break. Turns out we're not as good as we thought. First round exit, right? That is kind of the critical moment. And then playoffs, of course, that's where champions are crowned. So that's the way I kind of break down the calendar. And for Karl-Anthony Towns to be out, going through that right before he hits the All-Star break at a team that's trying to figure out that chemistry, that's problematic.
And it makes it tough if you're management there to assess what you should do, because Now you're going to go a month, you're going to go 12 games, 15 games, whatever this number ends up being, without getting to look at your core with this kind of, and I think there's a few teams going through that. Miami's been going through that. The Clippers have been going through that, where it's really hard to assess what they really are. But it puts Minnesota, like you said, they're not young, and it puts them in a tough spot.
But the difference with, even the Clippers are, what Kawhi can do. You know what he can do in San Antonio. What Kawhi can do in Toronto with one season. What he can do with just like give him like a moment, and he can win a championship any given year if he's healthy and playing. What Paul George can do. So that is another assessment instance. And you have like Batum, you have like guys who are veterans on that team. So you also know that the ship was pretty steady. Miami,
yeah, same
thing. The ship is steady. Minnesota, the ship is, you don't know. Like there's no sea legs. We don't know what's going to happen,
exactly.
So that's kind of, so I'm curious before we don't want to belabor the point. But Rudy Gobert, such a massive haul in the offseason for this individual, for this man. And right now he's averaging, let me pull it up, just under 14 points a game and just over 12 rebounds a game. Do you think, or I guess, how would you assess this move for Minnesota at this juncture in the season?
It clearly hasn't worked. In one sense, it did. Their defense has been better with him. I am not looking right now, but they had a top 10 defense for a while. That end of the floor seemed to get better, but the offense got more confused, and we haven't seen Towns has come back to earth a little, but I think we all thought Anthony Edwards was going to take a leap, right? And that hasn't happened. And how much of that, and this is a coaching decision, but how much of that is, now that I got two bigs, I can pack the paint. I can take away the driving lanes. I can make life difficult for Anthony Edwards in a way he didn't see last year.
So a lot to consider there in Minnesota. One thing I want to get your take on is what Giannis said recently on a player podcast. Nonetheless, we got a lot of player podcasts, tons of fodder for us in the media business. Giannis said he would take these 5 players as starters for Team International if he had to choose: himself, Luka, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Evan Fournier. And against these 5 starters for Team USA, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Bam Adebayo, he said that Team International would beat Team USA. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
First off, I want to see that matchup. Like, that would be so much fun. Team International is interesting because there's a lot of good passing with Luka, with Jokic. You've got guys who move the ball. It can score, don't get me wrong, but move the ball. It flies around. They're also big. I mean, 6'8" point guard. Evan Fournier is your smallest. And let's be honest, if he's on the floor, the guy I'm attacking, like, that's the only guy I can go right at. On the flip side, I kind of like Team USA. It's got more shooting. It's got more guys who can isolate and just create their own look. Steph's still got his gravity. He's pulling you away. Klay Thompson has found his legs over the last, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. He's started to look like Klay Thompson again. LeBron in those kind of – LeBron is still putting up like 39-point games. Like, when he raises his game up, when he's focused, when he's not going to be beaten down by the Lakers over the course of the season, he's still fantastic. I think that would be fun. I think the U.S. is smaller. I think they're a little more versatile. I think they've got better shooting. Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. I don't know how the defensive matchups are really fascinating because I don't know how you match up with Embiid and Jokic and Giannis, but I also don't know how you match up on the flip side. Like, which one of them is chasing Curry off picks?
Yeah. For me, like you said, I don't know which way I would go. Generally speaking, I find this to be interesting because this is how the All-Star game should work in my mind. Because this looks like the Olympics. Like, that's the like, U.S. Olympic team versus an Olympic international team. That's like, so for me, that's a much more compelling. Like, this question, this thought experiment is much more compelling than Team Kevin Durant versus Team, LeBron James. To me, like, that's a fascinating concept. It's kind of like the whole like sophomores versus freshmen concept, or like the rising stars, all that stuff.
Well, the rising stars, they did this for a couple of years. I think they've stopped now, but they did international versus
Team World,
US. Team World versus Team USA, and the world won, as I remember, like, pretty handily. So
this maybe foreshadowing this, but like, if you bring in the the cream of the crop, these MVPs playing against each other. I think that's a very so when I saw this, that's where my mind went immediately. I was like, did we just find the new all-star model?
Yeah. I would, you know what? I think for a one-off year, it might be really, or two, like it might be really fun to do that. They're desperately trying to inject some life into the All-Star weekend, right? Like it's a huge international showcase, but the basketball itself is not great. We'll go with not compelling. Yeah.
Yes. So, but this is what I'm saying. I feel like what is the point, right? And
right.
If the goal is to be like an international showcase, like you're saying, and build a brand of the NBA, understanding where the game is going, that your best players are becoming international. I mean, have been for the past couple of years. Their best players are international players, right? So if that's the case, and especially now with Wembanyama, like the idea, I call him like the pterodactyl, right? Like, so the fact that this French pterodactyl is coming, and you want to stoke kind of like the flames for the future of the NBA, which once again is international and will be international. To me, this is a great way to do that in a way that plays off of the fervor that we see in the World Cup and the fervor that we see in the Olympics, bringing that to the NBA. I recently, Kurt, I was very curious. I watched Manu Ginobili's Hall of Fame speech. When it's like 11 p.m. here in New York and I'm about to go to sleep, I watch Hall of Fame speeches. That's just what I do. Or it's just like a fun thing I do. So I was rewatching his. At the end, he speaks only in Spanish to his family. Oh. And there's a moment where he talks about the Spurs dynasty, and there's a moment where he talks about Team Argentina. You look at how many views on the NBA YouTube page, it's like 200,000 ish. How many views on I think it was NBA Latin America? It's like 350,000, right? So like it's almost like that concept of okay, wow, there is an audience. And there is, a desire for the game in different languages and, different regions of the world. I thought that was like a pretty interesting model where the NBA could go with this game.
Yeah, and you've probably seen this. Like it's something that struck me back in the day, like when San Antonio was getting its last title and we're in the finals for a few years against the Heat. When you go through San Antonio, there were, with all due respect to Duncan and Parker and your father and everyone else, there were more Ginobili jerseys because that is a Spanish-speaking culture, half that city, and he could speak directly, right? Like there wasn't a translator, there wasn't this filter. He was he was popular with everyone because who's been more fun, who's more competitive? Like what's not to love about Manu Ginobili? But I think the language barrier is a legitimate thing. Like that, if you're going to really bring in the international stars, that it helps to have those conversations in the native language.
And I think with like Kobe, and one thing that made Kobe such a big crossover star is Kobe could, he could do media in Italian and Spanish. So you're not only talking about a player who's won all the championships, is like, he was like a verb. I remember when I growing up, I would I would have a crumpled piece of paper in middle school and then do a fadeaway jumper and shake Kobe. You know what I'm saying? Like he was like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's crazy. Yeah. So, but one of the reasons why he had the international appeal, in addition to being great, was that he could connect with people. So I think that this new era of the NBA, you already saw like a taste of that with the Kobe experiment. Like that was wildly successful. And now with the league going so international and looking to really grow the game with NBA Africa, and so I think this is to me what Giannis and Serge Ibaka talked about, kind of throwing out. I think the league should really look into. I think it would be very compelling, and I think it's the future.
I think it would be fun for a year, I think, or two, and it might get old, but you've got to do something. Like we said, All-Star Weekend is you got to do something, don't you?
I wonder if you could actually just pair it up with World Championships or maybe not World Championship, but maybe like with the Olympics. It only happens every 4 years, right? So maybe that's something where every 4 years you have like the Olympic All-Star, version.
Fun. Yeah, all right. I'm sending the link over to I'm sending the link to this over to NBA's headquarters. I know enough people there, so. It's time for us to get to my favorite part of this now. It's time to talk about Corey's Jukebox and your songs for the week, because I know where you've been. I know what you've been up to. So I know I'm excited about this.
Yeah, let's start with the individual player. I just came back from New Orleans. Nolens. And I was there for like 28 hours. I was there for, the Bayou Classic. So it was very quick. It was in the Superdome. And the first thing I did once I landed, I went straight to Ernst Cafe and I got gumbo. And it was delicious.
Yeah.
And then I went back to my hotel room and listened to Louis Armstrong. So when I was in New Orleans, I also didn't realize, that to me, Louis Armstrong, one of his songs, Cabaret, perfectly encapsulates Zion Williamson at the current moment. It kind of just hit me all at once. I'm eating gumbo, eating shrimp po' boys, and I was like, oh my gosh, Cabaret. Because if you listen to that song, one, it's a great song. It's on the What a Wonderful World album, which is a great album. And Louis Armstrong is a legend. But Cabaret is talking about, like, what's the use of sitting in your room? Come join the cabaret. Like, come join the party, right? Like, there's this element with Zion being in, being out, being in, being out, where it's like when he's there, it's a party, right? But at the same time, it's like, man, I just wish I could see him there more often. And there was like that kind of longing for me where I was like, I feel like the past couple years, but especially kind of like this moment, it's just come join the cabaret, Zion. Like it's kind of like that moment where the whole party's going. There's a parade in the streets, and we just need him there more often.
And I hope we get that, don't we? Like, it's just, the game is just more fun when he's playing and when he's healthy. And he this week hit 100 games played, by the way, total in his NBA career, which over 4 years tells you how much he's been out. But
he's drafted number 1 overall in 2019. So for everyone listening, just to kind of remind everyone, so that 100 games since 2019. But yeah, so that's kind of where I went with that one. And then with the team, I am a big fan of reggae. So I went, so I like roots reggae, Kurt. Do you?
All right.
Yeah. So like, I'm talking like the Congos, like, Heart of the Congo is one of the best albums of all time. Like, if you're talking about, like, it's probably the roots reggae album.
Right.
A band that also made one of the greatest reggae albums of all time, roots reggae, is Israel Vibration. The album was called The Same Song. Highly recommend it. It is like, it's genius masterwork level. They have a song called Friday Evening on a different album. And to me, Friday Evening perfectly encapsulates the Chicago Bulls. If you listen to the song, one, I also think just the vibe of the song is kind of like, the lyrics are kind of like, there's this tension. And I think in Chicago, there is this tension of like looking around and seeing everyone else is getting fed. And like, I'm happy you guys are like doing well, but I'm kind of hungry, and like, there's like this kind of interior, a little bit of friction between, in the song between like the guy and his landlord, and I feel like that's kind of what we see with Zach LaVine and Billy Donovan, who just got, extended. So there's this element of like, what exactly is going on in Chicago? And they started so well last year and then plummeted. And this is all in the context of, well, your franchise player may or may not be happy with, his position there and reevaluating his future. He was just an Olympian and all-star. Like, we know how people feel about their values. And if they don't feel respected in today's NBA, they're happy to walk. So it's kind of like, to me, there's a lot of things happening in the shadows in Chicago where there is that friction and tension that I think is emblematic of like roots reggae.
They miss Lonzo Ball, don't they?
And the injuries, and the injuries. It's like, man, like we can't get it all together at one time. So
they miss his defense, but I think what they miss almost more than that, they miss the transition offense, the easy buckets, getting LaVine running, getting Caruso running to the corner. Those kind of easy buckets, you just have to have those in today's NBA. You have to run and get a few of those because the people don't think there's a lot of defense in the NBA, and there's probably maybe not as much as you see in the playoffs. But if guys get back and get set, it's just not that easy to score, and you've got to get some easy buckets somewhere, right? And they just seem to miss that in Chicago. Everything in Chicago seems okay, doesn't it? Like, hey, it's not a bad coach. They should extend him. It's not a bad player. We should extend him. Not a bad, but they're not.
Yeah, they're missing that crown jewel that we saw in Chicago for so long. But like, it is a fascinating scenario because you look at even the record, right? They extended Billy Donovan, and what's his overall record? 86 and 88. Where are they right now? Let me pull it up. Chicago is, sorry, one sec.
They're 500, I believe, or just
yeah, they're
below.
just under 500. They're 9-11. You know, so like everything's kind of five. And but once again, where were they? They were in a bad spot previously, and you know we're in the middle of like the first couple years of the overhaul that Konechobas is doing. So I understand that, but you're right. It's just kind of okay. And when we see in these kind of okay moments, is that it's like the tectonic plates are shifting, and there's going to be an eruption, right? So it's like okay, either Zach LaVine needs to transcend, right, and become a superstar, or B, something has to change. And we saw like that roster before that was built around Otto Porter Jr. That changed. Now we're starting to see like, okay, well, what is the tectonic shift that's going to happen? And so they're in that decision-making assessment process. And like you said, like they look best last year. They looked incredible in transition, incredible, right? That's when they were purest, and that's why I brought back the roots reggae, because roots reggae is all about purity. It's like pure roots reggae is about social justice, but it's also about kind of like just the driving rhythms, the drums, the bass line, like the scratchy guitar. Like there is this purity to roots, like real roots reggae, that I think Chicago is missing. They're trying to get back to it, but they just can't get the pieces.
That's a really great analogy.
Yeah, I love roots reggae. So now moving on to roots reggae for me, samba, just for everyone listening, roots reggae, samba, and choral music. But now, Kurt, it's time for Kurt.
What happened but by the way, you had cabaret in there. I just got to say, if it gets redone somewhere, it's still a powerful musical. If you ever get to see it.
Oh my goodness.
The movie. Don't see the movie. Go see a reproduction of it.
You didn't like the movie?
All Liza.
You didn't like the movie?
The movie's all right. The movie's okay, but I've seen the stage version twice and much prefer.
Okay, yeah. Okay, wow. I love the movie. I mean, but I've never seen the stage version. I'm going to go see it now because of your recommendation. So Kurt's Corner, let's bring you in, everyone into Kurt's Corner. What are we talking about today, Kurt?
Dallas Mavericks, who I've got a concern, Corey, but they tried to address it a little bit this week with making maybe some of the more interesting news out there. They've signed Kemba Walker, and if Kemba Walker's knees can hold up, he actually played. He didn't play badly for the Knicks when he played. He played pretty well. He just only played 37 games, and they brought him in. And this might sound crazy, Corey. They hyped him up in New York a little beyond what he could be. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but
never, not in my memory. I don't think.
Yeah, but he's not. We'll see what he's got left. He thinks he's got stuff in the tank. If they need secondary shot creation desperately, not having Jalen Brunson has really driven. They're 10-10 this year, and I think you saw what has to happen on Tuesday night when they beat the Warriors. They beat Golden State. What did it take? 41 points, 12-12 from Luka Doncic, who continues to just be otherworldly, right? He is playing at this insane level. But if he's not, then they don't have another option. There isn't a secondary option. And my concern is, Corey, the load that he is carrying, the weight he has to carry to keep this team there. His usage rate right now would go down, and it's a flawed stat, but his usage percentage would be top 10 all time if the season ended now. And it's up in the numbers. Let's give it some range. 87 Michael Jordan, or 2006 Kobe Bryant, which for people who don't remember, 2006 Kobe was, I should shoot over this triple team rather than pass to Smush Parker or Kwame Brown. I'm just going to launch stuff. I'm just going to do everything. That's where his usage rate is, because they don't have Spencer Dinwiddie helps a little, but then, he got ejected on Tuesday night, but they just don't have that at secondary shot creation. They are hoping Kemba can solve some of that problems. But Corey, I'm worried about Luka. I'm worried about, I don't like to say, hey man, you got to get this guy. I think sometimes we do a little too much of we got to get this guy some rest. I'd like to see stars play a little more sometimes. Somebody's got to get Luka some rest, dude.
The help aspect that Luka needs, I think he needs reliability. And the reality is Kemba is not reliable. When he does play, like you said, he adds that spark. The difference between, let's say, a Kemba Walker and a Drew Holiday is that Drew Holiday plays for the vast majority of the season, right? And that's like this is the thing that we need to understand about the NBA is that it's a job. And the number one aspect of any job is one, you need to be trustworthy. And part of being trustworthy is being reliable and available, which is why you keep hearing everyone talk about Kevin Durant, LeBron James, availability. There's a reason why availability is so important. It's because imagine if you had a great employee who only showed up half the time. It's like, well, you're basically freelance at that point. And like, I'm not going to pay you. Like, why? I would rather have someone who's here than someone who is good at what they do, but only shows up half the time. So that is like the only way I could frame this is like employment, normal office culture. You got to be there. You got to show up. So I think that's the issue with giving him help is that does Kemba do that reliably? Historically, the answer is no. And that is like a fact. It's just a fact. So that's my issue with the Mavs move is that it spells desperation to me because Jalen Brunson was there. That's why he got paid and moved on, right? Like he was there for Luka. I don't think Kemba could be there for Luka. So I don't like this.
Yeah, I don't think it's a long-term answer. And the problem is I'm not sure what the long-term answer is, but he's young. So it's not like the Lakers with LeBron dealing with this same, well, I don't want to waste a year question because LeBron's 38 and how many more years do you get? There's more years of Luka, but how long can you do this? At some point, you have got to find a way to put guys around him who can help him truly chase a title. And they aren't. We can't. They've got to get secondary shot creation stuff in before we can just start discuss whether Dwight Powell fits in that mode, right? Like there's other questions, but you've got to answer the first questions before you can get to the second and third questions down the line. So
I agree.
I am concerned about Luka. That's my.
Yeah, but with let's say Brooklyn, for instance, one thing that's fascinating about Brooklyn was that they built the background to then attract stars.
Yeah.
Then we saw that was not a successful model for Brooklyn. The thing about Dallas is they had the luxury of having, a generational talent. Yeah. And now they're trying to figure out, okay, maybe we should build a background cast. They try to do that. The background cast gets signed for more money elsewhere. So now they're trying to figure out, okay, well, maybe you go with a model that allows, like you said, can you find a number 2, a number 3? They tried to get Kristaps Porzingis there as a number 2. That didn't work. So I think you're totally on it, right? Where Luka needs help. But the 2 mentions you brought before of Kobe post Shaq, who did he find, right? He went from that high usage rate to winning a championship with Pau Gasol.
Yeah.
Right. And Michael Jordan, that was the bad boys era. They got beat up a ton of times, right? But then guess what happened? It all came together. Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, right? So my thing is Luka's on that trajectory, which is rarefied air with Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, right? So he's on that trajectory. The only issue is in both those scenarios, Kobe was like the Laker, right? And or one of the all-time great Lakers, and Michael Jordan was like one of the all-time great Chicago players, the Chicago player. Is Luka going to be like Dirk Nowitzki? Is he going to be like the all-time, the Dallas Maverick? Or is he going to go the way a lot of his peers go? And after 6 or 7 years before Dallas can give him a Scottie Pippen or give him a Pau Gasol, he ends up, jumping ship. That is the biggest question.
I completely agree. He said this week, he came out that said, Maverick fans don't need to worry about this. I just signed a 5-year contract. I don't think he's thinking that right now. But in a couple of years, he is. And they tried Christian Wood this year, and now he's coming off the bench, and Jason Kidd clearly doesn't trust his defense. They're going to have to find something that works. It doesn't have to be right now, but you're spot on. Like that's part of the NBA today, right, Corey? That clock is always ticking if you have a superstar.
And the good news is that it looks like Luka's kind of insulated. It's not like he is like you don't hear about Luka because in the NBA sometimes you'll hear like these kind of cliques where everyone hangs out together and they're all in LA together or whatever. It's like Luka's never like a part of that, like neither is Jokic. So I feel like those 2 guys, like if you're building, okay, we have time, and like Giannis is not a part of that either, right? So it's like there are some guys who kind of like, okay, they seem insulated and they seem like they're original free thinkers in that sense, and they'll probably buck the trend. So I think if you're a Mavericks fan, you're excited that Luka fits that bill. and isn't in LA partying with all those other guys and thinking, how can we work, play together, or like, all that stuff. The thing that I think Dallas needs to do to buy time, and once again, they tried this several times. If they can get him a number 2, that will buy you maybe 2 or 3 years, right? Like that's what Boston Celtics, like they have that luxury. They got Jaylen Brown. So Jason Tatum is good because then they're just looking for that final third piece. They're looking for their Dennis Rodman, right? Like, and the same thing with Milwaukee. Giannis had Chris Middleton, and then they were just looking for that third piece. It bought them time to find Drew Holiday. Then they won a championship, right? As long as they can get him a number 2, I think you're looking at a second contract, like another extension where you're like, we got him here for another few years before he hits that 32-year-old, what am I doing with my life? I need to chase a ring question.
Yeah, I agree.
So finally, fun segment. This is always what we end with. A Laker fan hit a half-court shot and won a lot of money, like $75,000.
$75,000, yeah.
That's a lot. When you think about any athletic contest that they have, during those halftime breaks or whatever, where do you think you would excel?
I'm not good at any of them. By the way, my favorite was, I think some of the people who listen to this regularly know I live close to Long Beach State, like golf shot close to Long Beach State. So I go to Long Beach State games just to have a beer and watch a game and enjoy basketball and not have to think about writing about it or what this means or, wow, they got to get Luka help or any of that. Just watch a game and have some fun. The half court there was, they gave a guy a half court shot, a student. If you hit it, you got 1 year free of Chick-fil-A.
Whoa.
Which for a college student, can you imagine?
I could not imagine.
Yeah, there was genuine pressure on it. I think one guy hit it the entire, I don't know. We were talking about this before with producer Dan and everybody. Like, I think I've seen some ones where you got to do a soccer penalty kick against a goalie. I don't think that's easy, by the way, against a good goalie, because it looks easy when these pros kind of saunter up and can contort their body to look like they're shooting one way and put it in the other corner. I do not have that skill, but I still think that there's room there where if I hit it hard and hit it right, I could at least get it in. And I played enough soccer that I think I could get that. Maybe after that, what would you lean into? Maybe a half court shot?
Yeah, I think my best shot is a half court shot. I'm actually decent at them. I grew up playing basketball and in the gym. So I think out of all the reps, I haven't done a lot of penalty kicks. I haven't done a lot of hole-in-ones. I haven't done, a lot of time on the hockey, trick shots. But I've shot a lot of half court shots in my day. So I feel like I built enough, equity there that I could get lucky once, after years of practice waiting for this question. But I think for me, I wish we could go a different route maybe, and maybe do mini golf. I feel like that's where I would really thrive. But I'm a hole-in-one in mini golf. I'm your guy. I've done that, I think, in college I used to go to mini golfing all the time. So I feel like that's where I kind of excel. But no one does that. No one's going to give me $75,000 to get a hole-in-one on a mini golf course.
No, and on a regular golf course, I don't know how much you've golfed. I've golfed some.
Not great.
It's luck. Even if you're on the PGA Tour, right? It's still luck. There's still some luck getting it to actually go in. And the one that's the hardest is the either half, 3/4 at a hockey rink where you've got to put it into not only in the net, but in that little slot at the bottom that's a foot wide or something. That's hard. I played some ice hockey. That's that kind of from not skating, standing in your tennis shoes on a rug.
Yeah, on a rug.
Try to get that. It's going to be so hard.
I've done that before. I forgot where. I think I was in college at Notre Dame, and I got to do that. It is unbelievably hard. I think I missed the goal. Not just the hole. I missed the entire net. I missed all of it. Because you don't understand. That's a long way. That's a long way. So it ends up you think, oh, I got the right angle, and it just keeps going and then it hits the wall. And so that was embarrassing. But yeah, I agree. I think if you do the food thing, it's funny. A couple months ago, I was in Columbus, Ohio for the Notre Dame Ohio State game, and I met these students who were doing a volleyball tournament. And apparently it's the way they start off every year, 20 plus teams descend upon the courts right outside Ohio Stadium, and they have a volleyball tournament under the lights. I guess it's a student tradition, I suppose. And I was talking to the people who were the ones running it, and I was like, well, what's on the stake here? Like, what are we playing for? And they're like, we're playing for a B-Dubs gift card, Buffalo Wild Wings. And I was like, whoa, if Buffalo Wild Wings, like in college, like you said, a free year Chick-fil-A, if we're talking about like a substantial gift card to Buffalo Wild Wings when you're a college student, we might have to bring out some. And that's a lot. That's a high playing stakes.
Yeah. So suddenly guys are trying to sneak in who are on the Ohio State volleyball team. The women's team, I think, was a powerhouse, wasn't it? Like, I think their Ohio State women's team. Suddenly they're like, I'll jump in this little grass tournament for fun.
I mean, Buffalo Wild Wings. So for the latest NBA news articles and more, why don't you head over to NBCSports.com/NBA. You won't be disappointed. Kurt always hooks it up. And I'm looking forward, like every week, to our conversation next week, Kurt. See you then.
I look forward to it.